Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something you literally experience every single day, but probably rarely think about on a biological level. We're talking about beauty. Now, for the longest time, we've kind of just accepted this beauty is good stereotype as a social construct, right? Like it's just a cultural habit we've all picked up. But, well, the data tells a completely different story. Beauty isn't just some social preference. It's actually a hardwired biological cheat code that is deeply embedded right into our neural circuitry. And when I say cheat code, I mean this has a massive, measurable impact on human behavior. Just consider this multiplier for a second. 10 times. Studies actually show that attractive people receive 3 times more attention, they face 30% less criticism in their day-to-day lives, and get this, they receive a staggering 10 times more help from strangers. 10 times. So we're not just talking about a subtle social bias here. This is a fundamental shift in how we as human beings interact. To figure out why this happens, we're going to take a journey today from the microscopic all the way to the macroeconomic. Here's our roadmap. 1. The beauty cheat code. 2. Your brain on beauty. 3. The 12% wage premium. 4. Justice is not blind. And 5. When the halo fades. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the beauty cheat code, the biological shortcut. To really understand this shortcut, we've got to look at a specific spot in your head called the ventral occipital region, which includes the fusiform face area. You can think of this as your brain's automatic neural trigger. We really need to toss out the idea that evaluating beauty is a conscious choice, because the research shows this area activates totally involuntarily to process faces. And what's absolutely wild is that this region fires and evaluates beauty even when you're given a task that has nothing to do with looks. Like even if you're just trying to guess someone's age or just identify who they are, your brain has already processed how attractive they are and pulled this neural trigger before you even consciously realize you're looking at them. Moving right along to Section 2, your brain on beauty. Let's look at the neural hardware. So how exactly does this trigger build into an actual reward system? Well, when researchers put subjects into an fMRI scanner and show them attractive, symmetrical faces, the brain lights up in a very specific, undeniable way. We see this vibrant linear increase in activity in 2 key areas, the medial orbitofrontal cortex, or mOFC, and the nucleus accumbens. Imagine seeing a scan glowing in bright hot pink and gold. Now, why is that a big deal? Because those areas are your brain's core reward circuitry. This is literally the exact same neural pathway that fires off when you find a $20 bill on the street, eat a slice of amazing cake, or even take addictive drugs. Your brain is processing a pretty face as a literal biological reward. And you know, this brilliantly illustrates the real danger of this whole biological setup. It's something called the moral overlap. The data reveals what is honestly a terrifying glitch in our neural processing. When we judge facial beauty and when we judge moral goodness, the activity in that mFOC region increases for both. The implications of this are just wild. It suggests that on a fundamental biological level, your brain actually struggles to distinguish between someone who is physically attractive and someone who is morally good. Our hardware is literally confusing a pretty face with a good person. So let's zoom out a bit. Section 3, the 12% wage premium, the economic impact. What happens when you take that microscopic neural glitch we just talked about and multiply it across millions of human interactions? Well, the data shows us that this neural bias definitely doesn't just stay in our heads, it shows up right in our bank accounts. Because a hiring manager's brain is subconsciously rewarding them just for looking at an attractive candidate, those individuals are significantly more likely to get the job. And it doesn't even stop at hiring. On average, attractive workers earn roughly 12% more than their less attractive peers for doing the exact same work. 12%. That is a massive, real-world economic advantage born entirely out of a biological bypass. Now, this economic boost is driven by what psychologists call the halo effect. Because of that moral overlap glitch, strangers just automatically attribute socially desirable traits to beautiful people. If someone is highly attractive, we subconsciously assume, oh, they must be kinder, they're probably smarter, and definitely more honest. Think about the last time you just instantly trusted a stranger for no logical reason. This unearned trust ensures that attractive individuals get the benefit of the doubt in job interviews, in salary negotiations, and really in just everyday interactions. It absolutely solidifies beauty as a socioeconomic cheat code. Which brings us to Section 4, justice is not blind. Let's look at the systemic impact. If we zoom out even further, we can see exactly what happens when judges and juries are operating on this flawed neural hardware. When we look at courtroom sentencing data, physical attractiveness acts as what researchers call a diffuse status characteristic. Judges and jurors often kind of eyeball defendants, and because their brains are actively rewarding them for looking at attractive faces, they actually perceive those individuals as less threatening and literally less capable of committing a crime. The end result? Attractive defendants see a massive 28% decrease in their odds of incarceration and a 14% decrease in their odds of even being convicted in the first place. I mean, let's just sit with that quote for a second. 28% less likely to go to prison, 14% less likely to be convicted at all. This brilliantly and honestly quite uncomfortably illustrates that our justice system, an institution that is entirely built on the ideal of blind, objective fairness, is deeply compromised by the biological hardware of the human beings running it. But there's a catch. Section 5. When the halo fades, the downside. Okay, so far, it probably seems like being attractive is just an absolute superpower, right? But nature always demands a balance. There's actually a very heavy psychological toll to having this advantage, and the halo effect can easily become a trap. First, you have what's called the burden of beauty. Sure, it grants you high status, but relying on unearned validation often leads to this deep obsession with appearance, which can actually degrade a person's internal integrity and self-worth over time. Second, the halo is incredibly fragile. Research shows that in very specific contexts, it completely backfires. For example, mock juries actually rate attractive defendants as more guilty in cases of sexual assault. And finally, there is the most inevitable downside of all, the aging trap. Let's walk through the actual timeline of this aging trap, because it is a severe biological cost. Step 1. Remember that the brain's reward response is tied to very specific visual signals of reproductive fitness, things like skin radiance and facial symmetry. Step 2. Biology dictates that those signals naturally fade as we get older. It happens to everyone. But step 3 is where the psychological breakdown really kicks in. For someone who has spent their entire life operating with that beauty premium, the sudden withdrawal of that 10x help, that constant attention, and that unearned trust we talked about, it is incredibly jarring. The brain's cheat code just gets turned off, and that often leads to severe stress and a profound identity crisis. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. We've looked at the glowing fMRI scans, we've seen the 12% wage increases, and the 28% drop in jail time. We know for a fact that the medial orbitofrontal cortex lights up for a pretty face, the exact same way it does for cold hard cash. So, I want to leave you with this question to really ponder. If our brains are biologically built to be deceived by beauty, who is really making your decisions? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep questioning the world around you, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.